Hello, lovely people. What's that? Medicine is sexist? Goodness. What new information, Jessica? Thanks for bringing it up. Well, all right, Salty Susan. I know this isn't exactly the first time you've ever heard this concept, but the fact is, it's a fact. And it's a historic systemic issue that still resonates into how femme-presenting people and those in female bodies are treated today. Oh, and everyone else, because that's how isms work. We're all harmed in the end, but some a lot more than others. Ah, Lord, that was a pretty heavy intro. If you're new and still here, then I'm genuinely impressed. Click the subscribe button below for some equally heavy videos, but with a smile, and some fun videos with a smile. I pretty much always smile. I think it's my resting face. So today we're going to be talking about hysteria, not to be confused with wisteria, a delightful lilac plant that can grow charmingly across garden archways and up majestic cottages. Let's just keep looking at this wonderful wisteria until we're emotionally prepared to discuss hysteria, which is far less calming. Okay, here we go. What was hysteria then? Well, hysteria was an erroneous disorder that women were legitimately diagnosed with throughout history. The symptoms of so-called hysteria varied immensely. Overdramatic behaviour, abnormal sexuality, depression, epileptic-type fits, insomnia, nervousness, anxiety, migraines, fainting spells, the list goes on and on. Essentially, women were believed to be suffering from hysteria when they presented any type of behaviour or emotion that was out of their control that men deemed overwhelming. For 2,000 years, the understanding of what hysteria was and what caused it was questioned, scrutinised, and theorised. Explanations continued to evolve throughout this time, up to the 1950s, when it was finally rejected as a medical diagnosis and mental illness and removed from the American Psychiatric Association's Manual of Mental Disorders. So, hysteria represents thousands of years of philosophers, scientists, and medical professionals misinterpreting and mistreating female patients. Fun! Let's find out more. Disclaimer. This video will be talking about discrimination against women, mental health issues, and trauma, so this may be a triggering video for some. There's a plethora of safer content on my channel. For example, here's a video of Claudia and I baking a pear cobbler. There's no hysteria here. Although there was one emotionally charged moment when Claudia shared her frustration that I hadn't prepared any of the ingredients in advance. But she's fine. She is not suffering from hysteria. Pregnant, but not hysteric. Although, in today's slice of etymology, the word hysteria comes from the Greek word hystera, meaning of the womb. So, hysteria and its evolution in today's common word hysterical are truly gendered notions. If you were to say I'm hysterically funny, you'd really be saying that my humour comes from my womb. I don't think it does. From ancient Greek times all the way until the 17th century, it was believed that emotional and physical distress and the female reproductive system were intrinsically linked. These long-standing gynecological hypotheses eventually shifted towards more neurological theories and finally psychological ones, with a stuff off at demonology on the way. Egyptians and Greeks. So first, let's look at the ways men were obsessed with gynecology for a cause for so-called hysteria, specifically their obsessions with the uterus. The earliest record of a form of hysteria can be dated back to the ancient Egyptians. In the Kahun Gynecological Papyrus, written in 1825 BC, it represents some of the oldest medical texts in history. These texts stated that a problemed womb could cause a variety of issues, from toothaches to blindness to even wishes to lie down and not get back up. Newsflash, that's not your womb. Lying down is just really great sometimes. The Greeks were obsessed with the idea that the womb was the decisive factor in why females acted differently to men. Plato believed that imbalances in the womb caused hysterical symptoms and that having sex would alleviate those imbalances. This led him to believe that hysteria could be linked to a dormant sex life. He also theorized that the womb longs to create children, and when it is barren, it becomes, I quote, distressed and sorely disturbed. The horror! The physician, Aretaeus of Cappadocia, why do I do this to myself, took an anthropomorphic stance, considering the womb an animal within an animal, which really sounds like the worst safari ever. He added that the womb moved of itself hither and thither in the flanks. So the next time you're on your period, feel free to say, "Oh, sorry Simon, I won't be coming into work today because my womb is running hither and thither in the flanks." This was the start of one of the most well-known Greek hypotheses about hysteria, the wandering womb. Hippocratic writers believed your womb moves about inside you, that it would just have a mind of its own, going on a stroll around your body. It was argued that the womb would bump into your other organs, causing physical and mental issues. If it moved up, you'd be tired. If it moved down, you would lose sensibility, or even die. The exciting adventures of the wandering womb. Under this theory, a variety of recommendations were made to bring the womb back into place. Taking baths, burning wool under your nose, or rubbing your inner thighs with a sweet-smelling salve. Ooh la la. Romans. The focus on the womb as a cause of female hysteria continued into Roman times. Roman physician Galen believed the womb was being suffocated rather than wandering around. He hypothesized that the womb could become poisoned, which would in turn affect other parts of the body and cause hysteric symptoms. He argued that this poison could be treated through herbs, through purging, or through marriage. He identified that cases were most common among virgins, widows, and spinsters, and so recommended a large dose of marriage with a regular regimen of marital fornication. This notion of sexual abstinence as a cause of hysteria became pretty commonplace, where symptoms recorded included insomnia, irritability, and, heaven forbid, erotic fantasies. Interestingly though, Roman physician Serenus theorized the opposite, so he actually recommended sexual abstinence as a cure for hysteria. He did not believe in the wandering womb, or that the womb was an animal. He believed it become inflamed, particularly from reproduction, and so he deemed pregnancy and childbearing the cause of hysteria. And I guess we can say that maybe he was lumping in a lot of gynecological issues that might have actually been the case, and maybe that he was a little bit right sometimes. The ideas presented in ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman sources reflect how the concept of hysteria originated. They put emphasis on the uterus as a determinant of female physical mental health, and pinpointed marital sex and reproduction as critical to a woman's well-being. Theories evolved, but the notion that gynecology was the foundation to hysteria remained. Demons. However, there was one key detour from uterine theories worth mentioning. Yes, you heard me. Demons. During the Middle Ages, it was believed that women's hysterical symptoms were caused by demonic possession, and those who suffered would be required to undergo religious exorcism. Women were considered to be spiritually inferior to men because, well, sexism, and therefore more likely to be possessed by the devil. To put it simply, if a physician couldn't identify a disease, it was assumed to be just the devil. Of course, because an evil spirit reaping havoc inside you is the only plausible explanation. This theory was upheld by St. Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s, who said the very kind words, "The woman is a failed man," and that their inferiority is a result of sin, which opens them up to evil. He didn't stop there though. He also argued that witchcraft caused hysteria, so we've already got demons. Why not add witches into the mix as well? Thanks, Thomas. 200 years later, in 1486, the book Malleus Maleficarum, I didn't do great in Latin GCSE, I think we know, translated Hammer of Witches, was published and became one of the most well-known texts on witchcraft. It analysed the correlation between sorcery and human temperaments, stating that the devil is an expert in human nature and is able to interfere more effectively with somebody more prone to hysteria. As women were considered more susceptible to hysteria, they were more likely to be accused of witchcraft. And so, hysteria is now confused with sorcery. Allegedly, women accused of witchcraft experienced symptoms familiar with epilepsy, dissociative identity disorder, and hallucinations. And looking back, it's unclear whether those women were actually suffering from mental illness or not. It may have just been the trauma of being under persecution itself that induced psychotic episodes, which, ironically offered proof to those around them that they were indeed hysteric. We can't win. It's that thing, where you try and drown a witch, and if she floats, she's a witch, and then you kill her, and if she drowns, then she's dead. But she wasn't a witch, so she's dead. Neurology. It wasn't until the 17th century that demonic possession was discarded as a cause of hysteria, and a new scientific development took place. Neurology. This was really the first time in literally 2,000 years that the link between the womb and hysteria was thrown into question. Don't be too excited about this progress though, because it was also believed that women had more delicate nerves than men and were therefore more susceptible. In fairness though, I do have hereditary neuropathy with liability to pressure palsy, so my nerves are a little bit more sensitive, and they do have this thing where they like palsy. But that doesn't mean all women, okay? I do not validate this misogyny. I got it from my dad. In the late 18th century, Dr. Franz Mesmer developed the practice of mesmerism, which formed the foundation of hypnosis. And that is right, by the way. Franz Mesmer is the reason we have the word mesmerizing. You're welcome. You can now take that fact into your next Zoom quiz. Because yes, 1 year on, we're still doing those. Mesmerism, also known as animal magnetism, was the idea that an invisible force flows through our nervous systems, abiding by the laws of magnetism. If the force was not in balance, illness such as hysteria would occur. Franz Mesmer would therefore use a magnet to bring harmony to this invisible fluid. Eventually, though, he argued he could achieve the same effect by just moving his hands around a patient's body. Sounds very legitimate. Mesmer's findings heavily influenced the work of Jean-Martin Charcot, a leading neurologist in the 19th century whose studies on hysteria brought him great fame. He believed hysteric symptoms were caused by neurological disorders that affected the brain. The most revolutionary argument that he brought to the table was the idea that men also suffer from hysteria, explaining that it was a condition caused by trauma commonly seen in soldiers. So whilst his findings were acclaimed by his fellow scientists and researchers, he went a step further and decided to try to invoke hysteria himself through mesmerism. And this is where he lost the trust of his colleagues. Mesmerism had been long rebuked at this point. It was not cool to practice mesmerism. Eventually, despite Charcot being considered a pioneer in the field of neurology, his theory that the hysteria was neurological was refuted. And guess what explanation came back? The womb. I mean, why are men obsessed with our wombs? In the mid-1800s, obstetrician Dr. William Smith believed it was the menstrual cycle that made you hysteric. His first question to his patients would likely be, "Are your periods regular?" Sound familiar? The ovaries, too, were also deemed a pesky contributor, and so removal of the ovaries was a common treatment at the time for women with emotional disorders. This obsession with the female reproductive system determining a woman's health clearly shows how society viewed the role of women, that their value only truly lay in their ability to give birth. This is why it endured for so long, because if a woman's purpose was solely to give birth, why would there be any other factor interfering with their emotional well-being? Goodness! In Victorian England, there were high reports of hysteria among women overwhelmed by pregnancy, raising their 8 children, and housekeeping. Thanks to industrialization, there was a great social and economic change at this time, but women's societal expectations remained the same. It's likely that these overwhelmed women were just purely asserting their indignation towards the growing injustice within their domestic lives, but that narrative just didn't fit comfortably with the men, who wanted to ensure security of their superior position in society, and so insisted these women were just, hysteric. Psychology. It wasn't until the late 19th century that the understanding of hysteria shifted once again, for the final time before it was entirely rebuked, to psychology. This development was led by Freud, who believed it was not a disorder associated with the womb, not with the nervous system, not with the devil, but with the mind. He developed Charcot's trauma-based explanation, arguing that trauma would disorder the mind and result in a whole range of hysterical symptoms: paralysis, amnesia, pain, terrors, fear. You know the list by now. Freud actually sat with his patients and talked to them about their traumas. Wasn't really the norm at the time. Typically, hysteric women would just, be brought to a lecture as an informative and entertaining exhibit for men to gawp at. So, whilst hysteria was eventually debunked as a legitimate disorder, Freud's immense research into it did help develop the well-known mental health treatment that we know today, psychoanalysis. So, by the 1950s, after centuries and centuries of theories, it's finally confirmed hysteria's not real. It was officially broken down into all sorts of dissociative and personality disorders, other mental health disorders, as well as physical, hereditary, and degenerative disorders. Today. So that's it. No more "women are insane" talk and "women's wombs make them crazy" talk. Oh, if only. No, unfortunately, misogyny in the medical field is sadly still very much alive. The legacy of the disease still has an impact on how women, those in female bodies, and femme-presenting people are still treated in medical and social settings today. This primarily exists because there is still a huge lack of trust in the pain that women are experiencing. For 2,000 years, women have been told their symptoms are in their head, or that they're mad, or it's just their natural erraticism, thanks to their wombs and hormones. That legacy doesn't get eradicated quickly, and so women's pain is often just dismissed as psychological rather than physical. There are worrying statistics on this with regard to endometriosis in particular, symptoms of which include pelvic pain. It can take up to 10 years before those with a uterus are diagnosed correctly with endometriosis. One recent study from the Journal of Fertility and Sterility found that the centuries-old correlation between mental incoherence and the pelvic area is the reason for diagnostic delays in endometriosis in modern times. Essentially, we've become indifferent to women's pain. The same goes for chronic pain. In a survey of over 2,400 women, 83% said they felt they have experienced gender discrimination from their healthcare providers. Chronic illnesses such as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, joint disorders all go amiss because women are told, oh, it's nothing, it's psychosomatic. I personally have experienced being denied medical help for a gastroenterological disorder that was causing me extreme pain because the doctors believed that as a woman, I was probably appreciating the associated rapid weight loss and causing the issue myself, despite having been the one to refer myself to their service. Like, what? The more we're told our pain is nothing, the more women believe that pain is normal, which only perpetuates the cycle of not receiving accurate diagnoses. This idea of women being emotional is also evident when it comes to receiving medication. Research has shown that wait times for women to receive medication is often longer than for men. One study found that women who went to the emergency room with severe stomach pains waited a third longer than men with the same symptoms. Research by the University of Pennsylvania also concluded that women waited 16 minutes longer on average than men to receive pain medication. Thanks to the historical obsession with the uterus, people with wombs are also still told that their pain is probably just your cycle, your hormones, your period. A leading specialist at the Institute for Women's Health discussed how one of her patients was told that intense pressure she was feeling in her chest was just a result of the menopause. It was only when she came in for a second opinion that it was discovered it was actually a result of the early coronary heart disease that was about to kill her. There are countless similar stories. It's just period pain. Turns out to be an ovarian cyst. Your sudden weight change is probably just your period. I'm pretty sure if you go down into the comments right now, you're going to find quite a few people who have left their own experiences of this. We miss important health issues because of this notion that women are hysteric and hormonal. The History of Hysteria shows just how deeply misogyny can affect medicine and medical research. Because of this, women have to strongly campaign for their own health and insist their medical concerns are being taken seriously. Not just to get a diagnosis, but to get a correct one. It's important to stress that whatever you're feeling is very real. Be it your mental health, your physical health, any type of pain, you deserve to be able to share, knowing you will be trusted and validated. And oh my God, we haven't even gone into like other indices of being not only a woman, but a woman of colour, a woman who isn't like super femme presenting, a woman with a disability, a woman who isn't straight, a woman who isn't thin, a woman who isn't speak the language of the country as their first language. I mean, it's a broken system. Steve did a really good video on this actually. I'm going to leave that in the description. Trust women's pain. Don't just tell us we're insane. My new cheer. It's a song. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you're not too brought down by that. And thank you to the members of the Kellgren-Fozard Club whose support makes it possible for me to make these videos. If you would like to know more about becoming a member and gaining access to over 2 years of behind the scenes videos, then just click the join button next to the subscribe button down below. I hope you found this video really interesting and share with a friend who will enjoy getting righteously angry about misogyny. Bye friends, I'll see you next time.